This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from Lillipub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Brooke, let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 17, Overflowing with Richness.
Okay, so as today's host of the Zettelcast meeting, I officially call it to order. Today's question for the Zettelcast is kind of a dual purpose question. And I went down this road because I find myself, especially when I'm working on my main writing projects, I find myself returning again and again to certain cards that either have key details or that point me places. And I was just curious, what does that look like for everyone else? And is there a card or a set of cards that have generated like a lot of writing or output of some sort? So that was the question. It reads, share a note card that has generated either your most robust or prolific writing or idea, or a card that has generated multiple writings or ideas, and how did that evolve? So, who's got one?
Well, I do.
Okay, go.
Okay. So this is a little card. It's kind of an old one. Because it doesn't have any of my thoughts, that's how I know it's an old card. But this card was a keystone for me that brought a crashing cascade of realizations and brought so many aspects of my Zettelkasten together under one roof that it totally changed my life, which I guess is kind of a minor significance for a little 3x5 card. And what the problem that I'd been working on in the back of my mind was how to help my niece, who was not writing when she wanted to be a writer, because she didn't have time to write. And I had thought of the Zettelkasten as being the perfect answer because she could just track her writing, even if it was in little segments. But of course, that wasn't the big problem. The big problem was getting back into the emotions of the writing. And so I had been working, it was a puzzle that I had no answer to. And I just worked through it. I couldn't say I actively worked on it because I couldn't even imagine what could help with the problem. It was just like one of Feynman's mysteries that you just keep in the back of your mind and pull out every time you read something new. Will this help? Will this help? Will this help? Well, this was a video, and it was my bib card was of a video called Unlocking Education and Virtue. And it is a program that is for elementary school students all the way up to actually preschool, all the way up through high school, where they actively teach the virtues in the classroom setting. And in this particular video, which was the sixth of a six-part series, a psychology researcher, PhD psychology researcher, was giving her input, and she simply noted how the four major positive character traits in the study of positive character traits and virtues corresponded directly to the four cardinal virtues. And to me, it was like a Rosetta Stone right here, because I realized that now all of the material that I had in my past work that I'd forgotten all about when I worked for 3 years as a statistician for a psychology professor, I realized all of that information applied to writing because, of course, all of the emotions come out of all these conflicts of, vice and virtue, and that's all the stuff that writing is all about. And this was like a way of mapping everything I knew about tracking emotions from a data standpoint so that you could actually capture them in a concise format. And that was the way of capturing the emotions of the story where you left off. And it was the answer. It led to a 35-week course, Reawaken the Dream of Writing, and my book, Writing with Emotions, and set me off on a whole new life study, because these emotions turn out to be bottomless in the amount of study that you can dive into them. So,
Wow.
Very nice. We should frame that card.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like that first dollar earned, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
there you go. Thanks. Yeah, Deb, that is. It functions like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Okay, who else?
Who in the world wants to follow that?
I know, right?
Somebody would speak up. I was waiting. I didn't want
Yeah.
to-
Well, I'll add my little paltry thing.
Oh.
So what I did in order to investigate this, I went and I was looking through my index for the topics that have started to rate their own card. In order to say, well, where are the conversations happening? And by far, the greatest number of conversations are happening in the world of games.
Mm-hmm.
And so the very first card that I created, I wouldn't say that it spawned all of this. It was more like a backfill, because before I had my Zettelkasten in 2021, I was just reading on all sorts of things, including games. And why I was interested in games, that was a bit of a mystery to me. But I since then, there's a whole lot of the Roanoke story that is quite informed by what I've learned about games, and how people view games as way more than diversions. And so this card is just, it just starts out as the definition of game studies that I snagged from Wikipedia. Game studies, also known as ludology, from ludus, which means game, and logia, study, research, is the study of games, the act of playing them, and the players and cultures surrounding them. And my personal observation on that was, I want to study games as a way of creating laboratories for learning. And so my initial idea with all of this was, there's certain things that I try to learn in music as a composer that would be fun to learn through a game, and would be fun to teach others through a game. And that was kind of a hook for me. And then as I was exploring this world of game development, story is all over it. And so it was that overlap that it's like, oh, because I'm not a game player. I haven't been a game player. It's very strange for me to be the person putting myself up this way. But it is fascinating to me, this notion that there is a world of games, and we see it in Lilypub. A lot of people who come from the Dungeon and Dragons world, which is so cool. It's not a game I ever played, but it's like a little bit like I'm a kind of a spectator. But I'm trying to figure out what's my way in, and it just has very naturally spawned a lot of stories. I don't think that there's any end to those. Little ones, big ones. But it's all kind of in service of learning something.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Sounds like more than a tidbit to me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
As you
I'll
was
go next.
speaking, Julianne, it occurred to me that a synonym for games is rehearsal.
Oh.
you know, rehearsal,
Yeah.
because you have
That's interesting.
an opportunity to put yourself in X, Y, and Z situations and learn from that, you know.
Yeah.
These video games are absolutely much more than just a notion, you know, just
Yeah. Well, rehearsal's something I know about. Thank you.
but we all do, you know. That's
Yeah.
I think if we stop to think about it, you know, the opportunities that we have in school, that's what makes school potentially anyway so valuable, is the opportunity to rehearse,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
so you can begin to make it second skin, you know. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Sorry, I interrupted you, Victoria.
No, no.
Oh, okay. Well, so while I'm speaking, I'll put my little 2 cents in. Um, both of you, that is you, Julianne, and you, Kathleen, speak of a, a card that has spawned other, you know, instant spawned something. Mine, on the other hand, is a card, and I'm not even sure it's a card, if you can call it a genuine card. Well, you can't see it because of my blur, but anyway, it's the library. That's what I call it, the library. And it's the place where the talking tones and the whispering tones live. And
Oh,
so I have these notes on the card that says, first story, birth of the librarian. Second story, birth of the library. Third story, the separation, the talking and the whispering tones. So it started off as one big place of wisdom kind of thing. And then it separated out into these whispering tones and the talking tones. Why? What happened? You know, kind of thing with that. And the fourth story, and none of these stories are written. They're just, you know, ideas that have come to me actually while I was thinking about this activity. Okay.
awesome.
That's when it came. And the fourth story that came was the idea of a hint of rivalry, and the sound of war.
Mm.
You know, so that's all I have for that. But I thank you, Victoria, because before that I had nothing. Before you posed that question,
Yeah.
before I started thinking about that question, I was just going around in circles, you know, just around in circles. But the question gave me, I don't know, some kind of spidey
Yeah.
spidey stickers or whatever happened. Anyway, it allowed me to pull out those 4 ideas. So thank you.
Wow,
Cool.
I
I
love
look
that
forward
the
to reading
librarian.
those stories.
I'm sorry.
I just said I look forward to reading those stories.
I look forward to writing them. You know, I do. I do.
I love that the librarian preceded the library.
Yeah, because there was this. It's almost like I don't know, the ether or whatever that was that happened before the word. You know, God spoke the word and things began to happen. You know, so it's kind of like that. It suddenly occurs to me right while I'm speaking here. You know, but again, the opportunity, this coming together in these discussions or another form of rehearsal, you know.
Yeah.
So it's great. But that's the extent of what I have at the moment. but it's overflowing in richness that I didn't even have before, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think we have a candidate episode title: Overflowing with Richness.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. Right. Okay.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
for my card, um, I wouldn't say that this card necessarily spawned a lot of stuff, but it is an encapsulation of everything that I've been working on. And I wrote it in September of 23. It was based off of reading E.F. Schumacher's book, A Guide for the Perplexed, which I've mentioned before. That was one of the first books that I actually, put into the Zettelcast and did a bib card and wrote main cards for. So quite a lot of the foundational parts of my Zettelkasten are from that
Mm.
book. But from, I don't even remember specifically what he was writing about, but it spawned this idea, which was not a new idea. I've thought this many times before, but I wrote it down for the first time. Character can't be built in a factory. Human development cannot be systematized. It is entirely individual. And industrialization is inimical to humanity. And this is basically my whole project. If there's an underlying theme to everything that I'm writing right now, this is it. It's inspiring people to look beyond the Lego blocks that we're given to build with by, our society, and find, first of all, it doesn't matter how many different Lego blocks there are, they're still just Lego blocks. There's other things you can build yourself with. You just have to find and be able to think that other possibilities exist and then find other options. And that's my whole reading old books thing and exploring the past. That is the purpose. Reading old books is fun, but the purpose is to find new ideas, old ideas, but new to you that everyone's forgotten, so that you can find things that really speak to you and be able to build like what Kathleen has done with Thomas Aquinas. Um, you know, Stuff that's been forgotten, and she's building something new that is completely suited to her interests. So yeah, that's what it's all about for me is inspiring people to find those sources. And I can't take any credit for inspiring Kathleen in that way, but she makes a good example.
That's awesome.
Like,
These are
when you were
good. You guys brought the good stuff.
you were talking about that, Mel, I couldn't help picture, especially when you talked about how industrialization is counter to humanity. I was picturing the restoration work that you do with the older homes, where the homes were built individually, and you see elements in those homes that nobody has anymore. They're gone. And just ordinary people used to have those things in their home. Beautiful craftsmanship, a well-turned railing on a staircase, beautiful woodwork. We used to have that as part of our lives. And now it's all just flat and nothing.
Yes, and houses before, about the Victorian age, were built to fit their environment, and they were built from
Mm.
local materials. And the method of building, nothing was perfectly square. Nothing was, the rooms were not identical in length. The carpenters and the masons, they knew how to fit the materials to the space. And, it didn't matter that the rooms weren't square perfectly, because plaster would make up some of the difference. And plaster is not a modular thing. It's plastic, and you apply it. And drywall, you have to have perfectly flat and square rooms, or else things don't fit together and it's a mess. But with plaster, you could just go with it. You can do a curved wall, it's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I did have the great advantage opportunity of working a little bit with an old carpenter. He's in his 70s now, only just starting to think about retiring, but he learned
Nice.
those old ways of fitting what you have to what you're working with and using every piece of wood exactly where it needs to go. So I
Yeah.
learned a little bit from him, not as much as he knows for sure, but what I did learn was incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
So that in the physical realm, from the why I'm attracted to your work, is you tie those two so beautifully. The physical realm that you can see with the old houses, and the intellectual realm that you cannot see with the eye in the old books,
Mhm.
and the wealth that is there.
Thank you,
So
Kathleen.
true.
And with
Well,
all of that,
this
I
was
think of the
awesome.
timeless way of building too.
Oh yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
entree into that mindset, because the book itself it's ostensibly about building, but it's really about living.
So,
Yeah. That's another book I have to get now.
oh, you
I
It's
have
must.
it over
lovely.
there. It's on the list.
It's so lovely.
I know. I can't wait.
Let's do a book club on it on Lily Pub. I'm getting close to
Oh,
finishing The Starless Sea.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah. Let's add it.
let's do. I'll I'll do something. I don't know what it is. As my dad would say, do something, even if it's
Just do a
wrong.
thing. That's right. Well, to wrap us up, I I kind of went rogue and I chose something from my fiction world and something from my nonfiction world because I have both equally. So obviously, since my Zettelkasten was completely built around fiction to begin with, for me, the cards that I constantly return to are my two main character cards for Branch and Terra. Because on the back, I don't know if you can see, but there's lots of stuff on the back of each one, which are just little things, important dates, quirky things about them, relationships. I mean, I constantly return to them and often have them stuck in a planner, or they're just kind of like little security blankets that I carry around when I think about my story. So I would say something in every chapter that I write is related to something on one of these cards, that I really use them that much. And that's kind of what got me thinking about the question in the first place is, I have probably a dozen cards that are almost always with me, not even necessarily for any real reason, but they just are. I carry them around with me. It's just weird. So for my fiction world, I would say it's those main character cards. For my nonfiction world, let me set it over here. It's this one. No, it's this one. This one. And it's actually dated January of last year. So this card is officially 1 year old, but it was my very first note that I made to myself. Fiction Zettelkasten, fiction note box, and then I have a bunch of little notes underneath it. So this is probably my own genesis of the idea for the Zettelkasten for Fiction Writers book. But I didn't know that's what I was thinking at the time. It was just the thought of, what does this look like and how is it different and how does it function? I was mostly just talking to myself in the card. And so then down at the bottom, like I drew a line and bisected it in half, and then the bottom of the card came later. And that was around August, or no, it was July, because I started writing the book on July 9th. So it was right before that when I wrote down the title Zettelkasten for Fiction and started thinking about what might that look like. And so really my whole book was the genesis of the whole project before I even knew it was a project or that it could be a thing. I was just thinking about it out loud to myself, and it ended up on the card.
Yeah.
Like you do. So with that as my segue, my second question was, okay, a TBR list is like your to be read books. You know, everybody's got the books they want to read. Mine's on a card. So I thought, well, I also have a TBZ, which is to be Zettelkastened books or things that I want to put in. And so my most tantalizing item is over here in the book cradle. And it grew out of that, well, two things. When I unpacked to decorate the house for Christmas back at the beginning, right before Thanksgiving, something that lives in an archival box with my Christmas decorations is my 1856 John Milton. And obviously the first section is Paradise Lost, which is one of my favorite poems. And so I started thinking about Zettelkasten and poems, specifically when I pulled this book out. Prior to that, I had started, there's a tab over in lilypub.org where I was thinking about doing kind of a class, kind of an introduction to poetry. So this was already sort of on my mind. But then someone asked, can you Zettelkasten a poem? And I was like, heck yeah. So I pulled out Milton and started that section for my book. So I would say I've wanted to do this one for a while, but everything kind of converged. So I would say that is item number one on my to be Zettelkastened list. And then behind me on the bookcase right there, there's a little stack of books, and those are all pre-1910 editions. I've got I'm going to get the title wrong. I believe it's La Morte d'Arthur. It's the original story, the French story of King Arthur, and it's 2 volumes. So there's that one. There's James Joyce, Portrait of an Artist. And then next to that, I've got The Divine Comedy and Myths That Live Today, which is actually a textbook from like 1890 on classic myths that were important today at that time. So for me, I would have to say my biggest to be Zettelkastened list are a lot of the old books that I've collected, because I want to read them and have them saved in my note box just for posterity and just to go through that exercise. So for me, I would have to say that's probably the number one list of items on mine are some of the old books that I've collected that I just want to dig back into and get them into note cards. And then after that, I would probably have to say the fiction theory books that I'm reading for writing my book. I definitely need to get a couple of those into the note cards, but that's my to be read or my to be zettled list.
Okay. Well, I'll go next because mine's really short and kind of boring. I just finished a 10 class series on an introduction to writing with emotion, and I taught from Zettelkasten cards because I've so much of my audience are people who are interested in the Zettelkasten, but I have to give my emotions people a turn. Yes, we do fusion writing every week, but I was getting questions about where do you start with the book? I feel so overwhelmed, and I didn't want people to feel so overwhelmed. So I taught this 10 video series on it, and I made all these cards. Well, they're all nice, fine, complete main cards, but they don't live in Zeek. They're not indexed. And I have to make the decision, and I did finally make the decision. Do I want them to be a section of their own? Because all my stuff on the emotions, because it came together around one card, it's scattered all over the place in my Zettelkasten. So I thought, okay, I will let this be the foundation section, and I'll link the other stuff into this. So that's what I want as Zettelkasten. Get these indexed, and then in the process of that, pull in all the, one by one, pull in all the associated links for the cards that are elsewhere in my Zettelkasten.
It's a project.
Yeah, just a
it's
small
project.
project.
Yeah.
And there's the danger that 5 new book ideas or course ideas are going to emerge as you go through that.
Oh, yes, I'm certain. And I
it's
think that's part of the
incendiary.
glory, not the danger.
Yeah.
Well, my to read list is there for all the world to see. And
Yeah.
you can probably look at that and go, Julianne, you're never going to read all that. You don't have enough years of life left. So what I'm excited about is Mortimer Adler's syntopic reading, because what he says is, if you're going to be doing a graduate course and you're going to pick out maybe 100 books, are you going to read all 100 books in the same way that you would read the best ones? And how do you go through that strategically? I'm very excited about the process that he has described. I feel like I get it. And the syntopic reading lists will pull from 2 areas. One is the Roanoke Project, because we already have I've suggested a bunch of books. I haven't Zettelkastened any of them. And I do feel like at least some of those I want to have as my second skin. And I think that the syntopic reading is a very interesting spin, because you start with the connections that you're proposing to make between the items. And I'm not saying everything all in one field. I'm saying game design and house design and software design.
Yeah.
Designs, fiction design,
Yeah.
is one of those areas. So two things. One is the Roanoke Project. And what I like about this and the other one is just, what are some things that I can do that might overlap with Roanoke that can serve the job that I do, that I continue to be paid for, right? And I think that there are lots of opportunities there where the research that I'm doing from 9 to 5 is going to be pertinent to the fiction that I'm writing. So
Cool.
what excites me about both of these things is something that I learned from my Agile coaching days called the pull model, Pull. And this is where, instead of having work pushed to you, here, do this, even if you do it as a task list, it's creating a compelling need for the work to be done. And you do it because you need to. And that's what I am feeling is possible with the syntopic reading list. It's like, I need to get this bit of wisdom out of that book because there's a gap in my knowledge that I need in order to write this scene.
Nice.
So I won't necessarily be doing deep analytical reading of all of these books, but it will be deep analytic reading of the bits of the books that I need. And you can always come back for another pass when you realize tangentially, it's also about this. So it's totally reduced the feeling of overwhelm by my ever and growing reading list, because it ends up sort of like the Zettelcast in itself. It creates a home for the ideas.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the idea of creating a need for something so that that's the thing that you reach for. That makes a lot of sense.
As opposed to what some of my reading has been a little bit more like grasping at straws. Please give me the answer.
Yeah.
To the big questions like, who am I and why am I here?
Right.
Okay, well, I have just two And I've mentioned these before, but they're not Zettelkasted yet. You know, I don't know. Well, I do know I'm spinning. I know I'm spinning around, uh, and I'm looking for, you know, some some handholds, some grips that'll stop me spinning and get me doing, you know. But the first one is again Michael Lavery's books. Okay, Whole Brain Power, to the book itself and the workbook. And it's all about integrating both sides of the brain, you know, and you do this through writing, you do this through thinking, you do this through balancing balls, hand-eye coordination kind of thing. So I have his whole kit. I mean, he has a kit that he's sold. I don't know if he's still selling it, but it's called Brain in a Bag.
I need that.
These pedals and all kinds of gizbobs that you can use in the exercises that he talks about. So that's important because I need some integration here. I need I cannot be spinning forever. This does not, you know, what is spinning forever, what does what? It digs a hole, you know. I don't not the objective. Okay, so
True.
right. Okay. And the other set of books I also mentioned before, it's visual thinking and visual visual doing. Visual thinking and visual doing. Those books were written by, I don't know how she pronounces her, excuse me, I don't know how she pronounces her name. Wilhelmina Brand is her last name. And again, it's just that whole idea of capsulizing whatever the concept is in a visual, so that it's when somebody sees it, it's absorbed immediately, and that is a wonderful quest, a wonderful quest. So those two books or sets of books, that's what needs to be Zettelcast in my world. Well, three things. Once second skin, these two plus writing with emotions, you know, I should be catapulted as a result,
Yeah.
into a whole new dimension of myself, you know. So this is what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
My answer is multi-layered and multifaceted. So here we go. I do have several to-read book lists. I've got one on my phone that is just sort of everything that somebody has mentioned that sounds interesting, that's not immediately applicable, goes on that list. I've also got cards in my Zettelkasten of like, if somebody says, these are the foundational books you need for this subject, you know, read these 3 or 5 books, you know, to get us started. If it's not something that I'm immediately interested in, I just write those down. So I've got, you know, one on chess. Sometimes I go through phases of liking chess. So now I've got a list of books to look at next time that comes around. It's not right now. I've got one on carpentry. I've got one on architecture. There's many more that I could make, but that's what I have right now. So that's to read. But to Zettelkasten, right now, of course, I'm studying Ramon Lull, and I'm almost finished with what I'm considering to be my foundational books. But I have collected a couple new ones from a particular writer. They are called The Spiritual Logic of Ramon Lull and The Evangelical Rhetoric of Ramon Lull. They're both by the same author. There's actually a third book he wrote, which I haven't gotten yet. Well, I've ordered it, but it hasn't come yet. So those three I'm looking forward to probably not reading as deeply as my first books, although I might if they turn out to be really valuable. But I want to get another perspective and integrate the insights from those books into what I already have. So that is first up. Longer term, I've got the Cosmic Doctrine, which I have meditated with discursive meditation on the first 5 chapters or so. This is an incredibly dense book. You can meditate on individual sentences. There's with value. So I want to finish up this book at some point, and as part of my meditation process, I write down my insights and put them in the Zettelcast. So that will go in there. And then longer term, I have this idea, which I sort of explored a little bit in my short-lived podcast from last year, 2 years ago, 2 years ago, that of analyzing some science fiction and fantasy stories according to the Cosmic Doctrine, because I finally finished the Wheel of Time series at that time, September of 23, and I was like, man, the way this world ended up working is really similar to what's talked about in the Cosmic Doctrine. And so I analyzed that a little bit, but I would love to, once I finish this book, go back through that whole series and find the clues and be able to, write a whole thing about how it fits into that. And the other series is a science fiction one. It's the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey, I believe. It got turned into an HBO series as well. But that series of books also has very similar sort of cosmology. So I would want to analyze that one as well. So that's, I don't know when I'll do that. It's a way down the line, but I'd love to find those connections because I think it's really interesting. And I'd love to explore whether the authors just sort of pick these ideas out of just sort of the general intellectual ether or whether they add, direct connection to it. I don't know the answer to that. But it'd be fun to explore when I get the chance.
I love having like short, medium, long, and longer term. I'm gonna have to rethink my timeline for that because that's a good way to think about it. Like things you want to tackle pretty quickly, things that okay, I can tackle that later, longer. I like that. That's cool. Awesome. Well, here endeth my questions, my queries for the group. Anybody want to add anything?
I thought they were wonderful. I really enjoyed them very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah. I mean, Deb owned up to it. That, well, thanks for asking the question because now I know what I think.
Right.
There was certainly some of that for me as well. It's like, I went looking for the evidence and it was like, well, would I have picked games? I'm not sure that I would have, but it's very evident.
Yeah.
And the whole planning of what you're going to put into your Zettelkasten, you really do need to do that because Zettelkasten takes time. It's worth it, but you can't just, I don't know, I can't just devote that amount of time to something that I don't really quite get what the payoff is going to be.
Yeah.
It reminds me, Kathleen, when we were in a previous episode when we did the memory techniques, and you said, "Yeah, but why?" And for me, it's the second skin thing.
Yeah.
And the Zettelkasten is a great way to develop a second skin. It's not just the factoids. The factoids are on the bib card. It's the communication of the insights that creates life-changing works.
and then it generates other works. And you've kind of gotten me between your request and Deb's request. Deb wants to have the character traits as a second skin. Well, if it's a second skin, they can't just be a series of threads. They have to be woven together into a cloth. And then as to how that's going to happen, well, part of it, one of the answers, definitely one of the courses, is what you were talking about, courses in the sense of weaving, is the question you were asking about the modifiers. Because now we have to start thinking, how do these things cross connect? Because that provides the connections in the other direction. And I didn't even think about, all of my directions were from small to large, or from large to small, like in that order, like Deb's worksheet, where you can start out with the groups and then you go to the subgroups, and all the way down to the character traits. And so that's you can go backwards or forwards on that, but it's threads. And then what connects them? What interconnects them? Is it another whole dimension to start exploring? So it's just, and all of that, it all comes out of the Zettelkasten.
Crazy but true.
So, where could we go? Where could our viewers go to find out more and discuss this more?
lilypub.org.
Yeah.
Yes, you can find Roanoke. You can talk about all things going on in the Roanoke project on lilypub.org. You can sign up for notifications on Roanoke, or you could join us in lilypub.org as a member and talk about all things Roanoke or Zettelkasten. We have a circle for Zettelkasten that's pretty active, and a Roanoke group that's ready to start talking about what's going on in our project and what ideas you might want to contribute. lilypub.org. Thank you, Mel.
Come join us.
And when you're in lilypub.org, you might say, what's this Explorer Guild thing? What might we discover in the Explorer Guild?
That's right.
Yes. I'll give you a hint. Whatever you want.
That's right.
And of course, Fusion Writing, where Victoria leads us every
Yes.
week in a Zoom call for discussing writing that we do.
Mhm. Come and share, or just come and play.
Well,
Yeah.
I volunteer to lead us next week.
Yay.
My newsletter will be out, so that drops the pressure level, and I would be happy to take the helm.
Awesome.
You get a lot of your money's worth with these newsletters.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yours and Mel's. They're very, it's not a one and done read.
No. I love yours, Mel. It just stretches my brain, and I love that.
Well, the January one should be arriving very soon.
And
Victoria,
soon,
do you intend to have a newsletter after you publish your book?
Oh yeah.
All right.
I can't commit exactly to when the book will launch. I think it's reasonable to say in the next 6 weeks or so. And then, yes, my newsletter will come out after it launches, and all of those things take the time that they have to take to actually get it going. I think the first newsletter comes out like 3 weeks or so after that. So somewhere in that time frame. But I'm at the end. I was telling Kathleen this morning, like there's the crest of the hill, and I'm like right here. I'm almost over. So I just need to bury my head. And the thing that takes the most time is creating the note cards, which are the visuals that go with the book. If I don't already have them, or if they're ones that I'm doing digitally, I have someone that's doing those for me, thank God, because that takes a lot of time. But you know, now I'm down to the last bit of writing and then the putting things together. So it's coming. It's coming. I can see the end.
Well, raise your hand if that book is going to jump to the top of the pile.
Oh, you're too kind. Too kind. No pressure.
Definitely going on my Zettelcast list.
Yeah, yeah.
And hey, some of the note cards are already done. You can copy mine.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, should we halt this one and start our second meeting?
Well, let's do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.